Crafting the perfect shot takes a lot of skill, patience, and dedication. And my guest on today's episode of Voice of the Visionaries has all of that in spades. So let's learn about what it takes to be a director of photography. Welcome back, Visionaries. On today's episode of Voice of the Visionaries, we're going to be talking to my longtime collaborator friend, Michael D. Head, who is a director of photography, writer, producer, educator, and all-around cool guy. And we're going to talk to him about what it takes to be a director of photography in the film world, and hopefully glean some really great insights that will help you on your filmmaking journey. Before we get into that, however, don't forget to subscribe to learn the art of filmmaking made simple. And don't forget to click the bell icon so that way you don't miss any new videos. Now let's dive into what it takes to be a director of photography. All right, Visionaries, I want you to give Michael D. Head a really warm welcome to the show. He's a director of photography who's been in the film production business for a long time, and he's also an editor and a writer. So please give him a very warm welcome. And Mike, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. I also produce, I also direct, I also do a little bit of everything. I'll get coffee if you need, all those things. But it's a lot of fun.
All right, that's good. That's the right attitude.
I'm also an educator. I should also mention, I'm also an educator. I also teach video production here in El Paso.
Oof, even better. Teaching the skills to the next generation, that's the way to go. Interestingly enough, that's going to play into our final question, but we'll get there when we get there. So, everyone has an origin story of sorts, and each person's story is different. You know, they get into filmmaking and creative arts for different reasons. And that brings me to you. What is your story? What's your origin story? What made you decide to pick up a camera and just tell stories for a living?
Well, I'll say it actually goes back to before I actually held cameras. I didn't go all the way back to middle school and high school in the 1990s, which is a great time period. But I did a lot of theater stuff. I did a lot of acting and drama stuff, which was a lot of fun. And I told my parents when I got ready to go to college, I was like, I want to major in acting. And they were like, no. Well, they didn't actually say no, but they said was, you can do that, but we're not going to help you with it, which was not really feasible at the time, which was fine. My parents were really smart. So what I double majored in computer information systems and social studies. I also minored in music. I was at Howard Payne University. That was 1998 to 2003. Crammed 4 years of college into 5, but I got 2 degrees out of it. And not long after I graduated, I started teaching first in public schools, where I taught social studies for several years over multiple different districts. And I had a job opening. There was a job opening at a private school in Dallas for a computer teacher. And so I interviewed. At the end of the interview, they said, we really like you. We think we would like to hire you. Oh, by the way, I'll get that. But at the end of this interview, they said, oh, by the way, you know computers, so you can teach this video class too, right? And I was like, of course I can. And I went home and Googled how do you teach video production. And I should of course say that the entire time I was in college, I was still, even though I wasn't majoring in theater, I was involved in the theater program. I did a lot of acting, drama, stuff like that. But I fell in love with video production. That was 2010 or so. And so around the time I went back to school, where I was teaching full-time and I was also attending classes full-time online at Full Sail University, where I got a third bachelor's. I have a lot of education in
Good.
film and digital cinematography was that class, was that title. And then I went to get my master's through Asbury University online, and I have an MA in digital storytelling. And I proceeded on from that and got an MFA, my Master of Fine Arts, in film and television production, also from Asbury. And the rest is history. I've been making movies since then, and I've learned a lot, and it's a lot of fun, and I enjoy doing it.
Awesome, awesome. It is very I get each person's journey is so unique because for me, I probably said this story before, but I always loved stories growing up, and I used to write my own stories when I was like 6. They were
Mhm.
terrible, but I always loved movies, and they were my go-to form of entertainment, and I never really thought about a career in them or anything like that until I saw the behind the scenes features of Batman Begins, and it
Mhm.
was like a 6-hour featurette and how Christopher Nolan and his team, they were building entire city blocks of Gotham City from the ground up with working steam, you know, lighting,
Mhm.
stops and everything. It was just so detailed and intricate, and I was mesmerized by that process, and I sat through the entire 6-hour featurette in one go because I just couldn't take my eyes off of it, and one thing led to another, now we're here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, that kind of leads into my next question. Everyone, especially, if you direct or if you write or you DP like you do, everyone has their favorite genre. They have their favorite,
Mhm.
what's action, it's comedy, rom-coms, horror, whatever it is. And that brings me to kind of ask, like, what are your favorite project types to work on and why?
Well, that's a hard question. Um, because I've done just about everything at this point. What are some of my favorites? I've always been a big fan of science fiction. Star Wars, we always got super excited when I was growing up. Hey kids, there was a time before you could stream stuff. And there's a store called Blockbuster. You would go rent movies. But we
Oh,
always got super excited on a Saturday because when my dad would drive out on a Saturday morning and he'd come back and he had 3 Blockbuster tapes because we knew we were spending all day watching Star Wars. Um, the original episodes 4, 5, and 6, and those were great times. You always liked writing. I've always enjoyed watching movies. Um, I never did a whole lot of writing until I started making movies, but I always one that enjoyed watching films. Science fiction is probably one of my favorites. Ironically, I don't do a whole lot of like drama romance stuff, but some of my films that have the most views and the most watches on them are these random little romantic drama things that I just had this idea pop into my head, and it's like, hey, let's do this. And one of them I sent to you is called Poster Girl. That's probably the one that's most watched, and it's just this kind of random thing because I was on set. It was right after I wrote that, right after I moved to El Paso. I was on set with some other guys working on this weird, like it wasn't a thriller, it was kind of an internal drama type thing. But I had this idea to just randomly entirely pop into my head, and that happened the other day with another script that I wrote that's about 15 pages for a short. But I've always loved science fiction. It gives you a lot of space to explore different tales about humanity. Um, and well, do I want to get onto that? Yeah, I'll talk about that right now. I have this weird theory that I'm like processing through right now, in that science fiction is not actually a genre. Science fiction is a setting. What do I
okay.
mean by that? Well, think about all the different kinds of movies that take place in science fiction. Fifth Element is an weird action comedy in a science fiction setting. Um, uh, Alien is a horror in a science fiction setting. Passengers, if you've seen that, Chris
Chris
Pratt
Pratt.
and Jennifer Lawrence, that's a romance in science fiction. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, comedy, science fiction. So I have this weird thing that science fiction is not a genre in itself, it's a setting for other genres. Same thing with
Okay.
Western. Western is a setting where you have other types of films in it. That's totally this random thing that I think about sometimes. I think of random stuff like that. Um, but interestingly enough, I also do like enjoying. I like enjoying. That was really bad English.
That's okay.
I kind of enjoy working in the thriller and horror genre. Now, a lot of people have people that I work with have problems with that because they're like, "Why would you like horror?" Well,
Mhm.
it's one of the it's until recently, it's been one of the few genres. Now, horror is a genre. One of the few genres where you have a very clear division of good versus evil.
Mhm.
Um, and people struggling against evil and overcoming evil. Now we're kind of in this weird postmodern part of horror. We're getting into this postmodern horror section, which we can talk about that if you want.
Sure.
Um, and it's not all horror. Like only certain kinds of horror, like gory stuff. I don't care about that at all. That does not
Mhm.
interest me in the least. That's boring. That's just gross. I don't like that at all. But when I'm thinking horror, I think more like Hitchcock, things like that. That kind
Ah,
of
yes.
thriller horror
Classics.
genre. Some supernatural horror too. Um oh, my brain's going dead right now. Um some supernatural horror as well. I like that because we live in a supernatural world and we kind of use that to tell stories along those lines as well.
Hmm. Yeah, it's true. Because I mean, in in today's world, it's very rare to find a film that is strictly one genre,
Mhm.
and in today's world, everything seems to be a mix of different genres. In fact, one film I just saw recently was Predator Badlands, and
Saw that last night actually.
I really loved it. I enjoyed it, and it was it was definitely a sci-fi setting, but with elements of
Mhm.
action, adventure, but also, it was in a way a coming of age story, in a
Mhm.
way too, which I really did not think of working with a character like the Predator, but it amazingly did.
I'm still kind of processing. I saw it late last night and I'm still kind of processing it.
Mhm,
My opinion, I thought there was a little too much comedy in it. I had a friend that loved all the comedy because it does there's a lot of like really funny moments in it.
mhm,
Um and for some reason when I think of Predator, I like my villains to be villains. I
mhm,
don't need to see them I like to have the like distinction there. So
mhm.
maybe that's just me overthinking things. I enjoyed it. It was a fun movie. Um it had a few moments that were just laugh out loud funny, but I was like, I don't know if I like that in my Predator movie. But I enjoy it was overall fun. But again, kind of almost an action buddy flick comedy
Mhm.
in a science fiction setting.
Yeah, that's actually a very accurate way to put it. So that kind of, springing off different creative takes, and it's kind of becoming a lost approach to filmmaking, but in today's world, everything is a sequel. Everything has to be,
Hmm.
a certain tone. Everything has to be a very either like lighthearted, or they have to have that kind of almost Disney Marvel kind of tone. And for certain things that works really well, and for others it just doesn't. But it all goes to the creative process of those working out the film, the writers, DP, director, and all that kind of stuff. So that goes into the creative process itself. You've DP'd and directed some films before, and every single person has a different way of approaching the same story or the same subject matter. So, what is your creative process like when you're approaching a project? And does it differ when approaching different project types?
Um, I do want to say something before I answer that. I want to go back to that idea of like sequels and stuff. We
Mhm,
can talk about that in a minute. My process when I'm a director of photography, um, I always have to remember my job is to help. I help craft the visuals, but I am still working for the director. The director is the one that's kind of guiding the ship. I'm helping them set up what the look that they want, but in the end, it's the director that's saying, "I want this shot. I want this shot. I want this shot." Now, there's a good director and a good director of photography will collaborate together. They'll
mhm.
plan out, "Hey, I think about this. What do you think?" The director will describe their vision. I'll say, "This is the kind of look that I think we should go for." Like you can see the um that over my shoulder. That's
Right.
from a film that is not yet released. That is Sasha Part 2, which is a short
Ah,
film that
okay.
I
Yeah.
DP'd. I think they're trying to get it out early next year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I worked with the director and I said, let's talk about the look that we're going for. Let's talk about the kind of feel you want, how that's going to look, how I'm going to reflect that into the lighting. And it's kind of a dramatic piece, and so the lighting's a little more dramatic. But it's a collaboration. I will, when I'm a director, because I do direct as well. When I'm a director, what I'll do is I'll take a script, usually my own, but not always, and I do this process called lining the script.
Mm-hmm.
And what that is first you break down the scenes. Usually that's what a first AD does is they break down the scenes, but I end up doing a lot of this myself. But as a director, I'll go through and I will use vertical lines to plan out the shots. It's a different process from storyboarding because I can't draw. The best thing I can do is stick
I can't
figures,
either.
but that also gets the idea across. But
Yeah.
what that lets me do is it lets me plan out the shots that I want. Hey, I want to make sure we have a 2 shot. I want to make sure we have a shot of the actress on her side. We want to make sure we get a shot of the actress on the other side. And I plan out those using vertical lines actually drawn on the script. I like to do it actually physically
Mm.
with the paper because it actually, for some reason, I just like that process a little bit better.
Yeah.
But then I'll translate that into a shot list. If there's an insert, if I need a shot of a cup with my diet,
Mm.
with my Dr. Pepper Zero, if I need a shot of a cup, I'll make sure I'll put a little line there and I'll say that's an insert of a cup.
Mm.
And so that's the planning, and we do that. I do that without anybody else around usually, because that process, it can take a while to kind of craft it. And while I'm doing this, I'm picturing the movie in my head.
Mm.
I'm actually looking at it. What is this going to edit? How is it going to cut together? I think about that process while I'm doing that. Because I've been on sets where directors didn't do that and they didn't have a plan. And so
Mm.
the director will say, I want this shot. And so I'll set up for that shot. And then we'll get done with that shot. I'm like, okay, what do you want next? I'm like, let me think about it. And so you have all these people, cast and crew, just sitting there twiddling their thumbs, waiting for this director to come up with what shot they want next.
Right.
And that wastes a lot of time. When you're volunteering your time, or you're on low budget sets, it's a big waste of time. When you're on a big budget set, it's a huge waste of time. And the especially when I'm on a set, I am very much about what are we doing now? What's next? What's the plan? I have this phrase I say sometimes: plan your work your plan.
Yes.
So now that doesn't mean you can't get creative. If you realize there's a shot you want or something you see on set, you're like, oh, this is really cool. You can still adapt and do it. That happened the other day with a project I was working on,
Mm-hmm.
where the shot was supposed to be like a close up of somebody crumpling a donut. It
Mm.
was like this kind of odd thing, but the shot, when I set up the shot for the donut, I could see the hand, but it was also this shiny table.
Mm.
And so I noticed the reflection of the actor in the table. And so I adjusted the shot down so that while we're seeing this donut crumbling, we're also seeing the actor's face delivering the lines. And it was turned into this really kind of cool shot that was a little bit of a modification of what we originally talked about. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
run it by the director, make sure they're okay with it. I like to have a monitor so the director can see what's going on. I don't always have that, but I do like to have that. But that's kind of my process. That's the way it works. Then you have your shot list, shoot it, done, give it to the editor, have fun with it.
Perfect. Yeah. So, everybody's approach is different, and I like that approach, and I agree with you because, like, oftentimes when you're on a set, you're battling against not only time, but you're battling against daylight if you're shooting outside. And I agree because a
Yeah.
director that doesn't come in prepared is a director that's not taking it seriously. And so, yeah, I totally agree with you there. So, I want to touch on Sasha, which was kind
Mhm.
of a darker story of both addiction and redemption, and
Mhm.
Poster Girl, which I found rather interesting. But that one you shot on city streets, which
Yeah.
is pretty complex in and of itself. So, what are some of the most important lessons you took away from shooting both of those films?
Um. Well, Sasha's kind of an interesting story. It's based on the real life of the main character Sasha and her husband Anthony,
Mm,
um,
okay.
who is currently a pastor in Alamogordo. I think
Oh, wow.
Alamogordo. I think it's on
Awesome.
there. but he wrote a book called I think it's called Letters to My People is the name of the book, if I remember right. But he wrote that book in a monastery because he lived a life that was drug addicted, alcohol addiction. He lived that life, and his wife Sasha stayed with him and remained faithful to him the entire time. And God used that to bring him out of that and to the point that he's now a pastor. He's affecting people mostly that are in that life right now. They're in the life of addiction to say, how do we overcome that? How do we fight that? A lot of people, they've sent copies of the books to prisons, and a lot of prisoners write him and say, man, this book changed my life, things like that. So it's a very inspiring story. And this is from part 2, which is not out yet. They actually had to recast the main actor, which is a little bit sad, but the second guy did a fantastic job. I have some funny stories about that shoot as well. But it's a great collaboration. The director's name's Eric Kirker. He's in Las Cruces. But it's a great way to use film as a means of telling those redemptive stories, those things that are just and those tend to be the best stories anyway, the ones where we see those positive elements in it. Poster Girl was kind of interesting. Poster Girl is the one that kind of just popped into my head, fully formed. We shot that during Winterfest. I want to say that was 2018, if I remember right. It's been a while. Total guerrilla. It was literally just me, the 2 actors, actor and actress, and 2 guys from Tower Productions who were helping me out, Carlos De La Torre and Austin Young, both fantastic guys. Because we were shooting basically entirely guerrilla, we didn't have a permit. We were just kind of walking around shooting stuff. We tried not to make big scenes or anything. We had one light that Austin was literally just carrying around because we couldn't technically put it on the ground because that would be a permit thing. And as a matter of fact, funny story. At one point, we were filming. If you've ever been to El Paso, we shot at San Jacinto Plaza with the alligators, if you know where that is. At one point, they were sitting there. The actors were sitting there. We were filming a scene, and I'm filming. We're actively filming a shot, and I hear a security guard say, "Hey guys," and I'm like, "Oh no, we're about to get kicked out. We're like 3/4 of the way done." No, they were just getting onto Austin because he had pulled out a vape and he was vaping, and it's like, you can't vape here. It's like, oh sorry, movie. Oh yeah, movie's fine, but you can't vape here.
Okay.
But it was a lot of fun. It's one of those things that it's a very, to me, it has that kind of fundamental element of it, but there's also that kind of fantasy element of it. So what did you think of it is my question.
Ooh, so initially I thought it was kind of just a standard, not a standard, but like a sort of typical romance film, and I thought being told exclusively without dialogue, that was a very potent choice, and I think it worked really well. And I thought her her dress, her outfit doesn't, her style doesn't fit with his or anything else around her. I'm thinking that's got to be intentional. And then the ending, spoilers for those who haven't seen it, but she turns out to have been the girl from the poster that the character had seen earlier. And that one threw me for a loop because it almost had this sort of bittersweet ending that was almost reminiscent of, say, old school Twilight Zone episodes, which I really enjoyed that. So I definitely enjoyed that one a lot.
Oh, good. I'm glad you like it. And to me, it's partially about the love of movies. It's because he ends up watching this movie where she's there, and that's part of the reason. That's part of what just popped into my head about it is how do we convey that idea. I also, you did point out it's mostly a silent. It's almost entirely a silent film. There's a couple of lines in there. I do highly recommend people that are getting started in filmmaking try at least once to make a silent movie because it's a different type of storytelling when you can't rely on dialogue. How do you convey ideas when you don't have words to use them? And that's part, I mentioned Hitchcock earlier. I think Hitchcock is, in my opinion, one of the better directors of the 20th century, partly because he started making movies in the silent era. Nobody
Yeah.
thinks about that. He was making movies in the 1920s in the
Hmm.
silent era. So he started making silent films. And if you watch his movies, most of the time you can get a lot of the ideas, even if you don't listen, not listening to the dialogue, because he is such a visual storyteller. And
Right.
that's a part of filmmaking that's a lot of people, I don't say they forget, they kind of don't emphasize it enough, that film is a visual medium. We're telling stories with pictures over time. And that
Hmm.
to me is something that's really interesting.
Awesome. Awesome. I agree. So we're coming to the last two questions of the interview, and they're kind of slightly larger questions, but um, everyone thinks that filmmaking is just, oh, hey, point the camera at, person, hit record. There you go. You made a movie. No, it requires a lot of technical skill. It requires a lot of creative skill. And it requires a lot of growth, both as a person, an individual, and it requires a lot of growth creatively, technically, and in skills. So, my question is, well, it's twofold. How have you grown as a filmmaker since you started, and how do you stay creative and stay leveling up, especially in today's world where there's so many distractions and so many things that vie for your time?
The second one's the hard part is sometimes I have to just step away from everything and be like, I just need to take like time to work on projects. Part of I think a good way to grow as a filmmaker is to watch good movies. Something that I'm trying to remember the phrase. Quentin Tarantino, who's not somebody I actually like very much. I'm not a big Tarantino fan, but he never did film school.
Mhm.
But his thing was he worked for years at basically a movie rental house, like basically a Blockbuster, but it was not Blockbuster. It was like
Yeah.
a smaller movie rental house. And so he says his film schools were films. That was where he learned to make movies, was by watching movies. The technology to create a movie is right here.
Mhm.
Ev- Literally everything you need to make a movie is in this little thing right here that we all carry around in our pocket. Now,
Right.
does that mean everybody's going to make a good movie? No. There is that technical element of it. That being said, this is not a movie I've seen, but I've studied some of the behind the scenes stuff from it. 28, what was it? 28 years later, just came out
Mhm.
this year.
Yes.
Shot on iPhones.
Mhm.
I think this is a 15. I think they're usually 15 as well. Um, Now it's very easy to say, yeah, they shot that on iPhone. Why doesn't my stuff look like that? There's a lot more to it than that. They used lights. They used audio. They used rigs. It wasn't like they just ran around with their phone doing that. That being said, you can learn a lot just by going out and
Yeah.
filming stuff. You have this in your pocket. Go make a movie with it.
Right.
Shoot it this way, not this way. Shoot it this way.
Exactly.
I say
Exactly.
this as somebody that's actually working on on a vertical shoot right now, which are big deals. But that's part of the thing. I'll touch on that as well. Vertical video, as much as part deep down, I kind of loathe it.
Mhm.
We have to be willing to adjust how we're telling stories to meet with what people want right now. And vertical
Yeah.
video is a big deal right now. Be aware of trends, be aware of what's going on. Don't try to chase them, but study what's going on. Study how things are done. Watch the behind the scenes stuff. Be fascinated by the behind the scenes stuff.
Mhm.
And also just experiment. Be willing to go out and say, I'm going to try this and see how it works. Find collaborators. Find people that you find your tribe, if such as you will.
Right.
If you notice, a lot of big filmmakers, they work with the same people over and over again because
Mhm.
they find people that they collaborate well with, and they're just like, why would I go with somebody else if I know these guys, if I know how to work with these people really well? The other thing, um, I'm gonna, I want to say I disagree with you, but I'm gonna give a little bit of pushback on like it does take. There is definitely technical skill. Do you have to go to film school? No. Did I go to film school? Yeah, it was great for me. It was what I needed at the time. James Cameron has a quote. I keep dropping all these names. James Cameron has a quote where he says, pick up a camera, make a movie. Congratulations, you're a director. Now
Mhm.
you just have to negotiate your rate. And there is an element of truth to that as well. where what's stopping you from doing this? Everybody has one of these in their pockets. Go make something. There's kind of this weird thing that happened with that. I don't know if you, because you're younger than me, you might not remember this. Do you remember if I say the DSLR revolution? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Uh, it was fuzzy at the time, so I was
Okay,
young.
that's fine. Everything, pretty much every movie, TV show, etc., made for 100 years. 80s, 90s, 1980s, 90s, early 2000s. Big cameras, big expensive cameras, mostly shot on film. The first major film shot on digital was Star Wars Attack of the Clones, Episode 2. George Lucas likes to push the boundary of technology. He did that in the 70s with Star Wars. He did that in the early 2000s with specifically Episode 2. Shot at the massive resolution of 720p on these gigantic $70,000 and $80,000 cameras. But this thing happened in the early 2000s. It was because I remember it because it was right after I got out of college. And if I'd have been a little sharper, I would have really jumped on that at the time. About 2003, 2004, Canon released. This is not it. But they released a DSLR. This is the Rebel G. This is actually my friend's camera. But they released a camera called the Canon 5D Mark II. And weird thing about the 5D Mark II, it was a professional DSLR camera just like this. But like apparently right before it was released to the public, they said, wait a second, we can shoot really high frame rates with this. Can we just add a video function to this? And so it's kind of at the last minute, they added in a video function so they can actually record full video using a DSLR camera, where previously you had to have $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 cameras plus film for that. So that started a gigantic revolution, and we're the benefits of that today because we can buy a $300 camera. Heck, we can have our cell phone. This wouldn't exist as a video camera if not for the 2003 Canon 5D Mark II, and it's all kind of gone around since then. Once filmmakers started realizing the quality they could get out of that. Did you ever watch the TV show House?
I've seen clips of it.
The entire last season of House was shot with, I think it was the 5D Mark III at the time, because they'd released a new version of it, because the quality was so good on those cameras. And where previously, like red digital cameras, they started at $60,000, $70,000. They're down to, you can get a red camera now for $3,000, $2,000. Nikon just bought red. I'm a tech geek, so please forgive me if I start rambling on tech specs and whatnot. Nikon just released a $2,000 camera that has red code in it that people are saying really good. The barrier for entry into filmmaking has gone down significantly. That creates a different kind of problem, because if everybody can make movies, everybody can make movies. That means a lot of them aren't going to take the time to develop their skills, their talent, to craft the stories, to get good lighting, to get good sound. I'm a cinematographer. If you don't have good sound, you don't have a movie. And I've been guilty of really bad sound in the past, and nobody watches those. Also, advantage of a silent movie, you don't have to worry about the sound.
Exactly.
But there's a whole lot going on in terms of everybody is able to make good films, good stories, and we have more means of distribution than we ever had before.
Right.
YouTube, Tubi, all these streaming services out there, that's part of this revolution of how people are watching movies as well, where we can watch them on our computers, we can watch them on our phones, we can watch them just about anywhere. I see we only have a couple minutes left. Do you think to stop, or do you want to restart the meeting? Or
actually, I just kind of want to go into our final question, which is, if you can summarize in a single sentence, with the filmmaking world becoming so changing all the time, if you can summarize a single piece of advice in one sentence for anyone looking to get into film, what would it be?
Go do it. Don't let anybody stop you. Study the technical, but don't let your own doubts stop you from doing things. Get good feedback. Get a mentor. Get somebody that is gonna not just be your mom and say, "Hey, good job." I mean, I love showing my mom stuff when I don't do horror stuff. But her response of "good job" it doesn't really help me very much. Find somebody that's going to really help you grow in your talent and skills. Take a class if you need. That can be very helpful. But the number one thing is just go do it. Hashtag Nike, but just go do it.
Yeah, there you go. Well, Mike, thank you so much for coming on the show. You've shared some incredible insights. And don't forget, Visionaries, you can go to Instagram and find Mike's production company, Mighty Productions. And you can also go to mightyproductions.com to see more of his work and possibly book him. So that's
And also michaeldhead.com. michaeldhead.com. I have a couple of websites too.
Perfect. That's even better. That's going to do it for this one, Visionaries. Thank you for coming on board, Mike, and it was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, we will talk again soon. All right, man. Talk to you later. That's going to do it for today's video, Visionaries. I hope you guys learned some really great tips that you can apply in your own filmmaking journey. And I also want to encourage you to give Michael a follow on his socials, which I'll link down below, and give his production company, Mighty Productions, a follow as well. That's going to do it for me, and I'll see you guys in the next video. But don't forget, stay curious, stay creative, and above all, stay awesome, Visionaries. Till next time.